Marvelous. Okay, cool. So why now? As the world adjusts to new work practices, the need requires to effectively source and onboard employees has changed. So we all understand that it's been a really interesting, we'll say, past 12 months or so. And we now have access to a more remote workforce. We need to digitize our practices. There's an opportunity now as clients are kind of figuring out the new way forward, an opportunity to accelerate growth, because last year could have been a bit of a dip for people and now or organizations. And now what we're looking to do is how do we ramp back up quickly, safely, effectively, but not lose any of the quality that comes along with this. Okay, so I'll move through the next one. Top challenges facing organizations today. Decreasing time to productivity with the new hires, finding the right talent through all the applicants, providing a seamless onboarding experience. Okay, so these are all challenges. Actually, to be honest, these are challenges that have been faced to organizations as far as I've been doing this. So I've been working in this space for 9 years, but it's been around for a while, these challenges. So tips for the successful talent acquisition around this. What we want to do is build the employee brand and attract the right candidates. We want to implement predictive analytics to find talent. We want to retain a personal touch in talent and acquisition process. And then we also want to simplify job application and onboarding. Okay, so build, implement, retain, and simplify is a really good, starting point for how we're going to achieve success throughout this process.
Sure.
So what do we do when it comes to building an employer brand? How do we attract the right candidate? How do we attract quality candidate? Okay, so as you can see here, 70% of candidates will check out a company's review on platforms such as Glassdoor, Indeed, LinkedIn, social media, to see what the employees past and present have said about a company before applying to work for them. So this is really fascinating, something I've quite often used myself. It's a great way to identify what the culture's like in a business, what the leadership is like in a business, and what employees are thinking, both current and previous. So Glassdoor and Indeed and LinkedIn are almost, like a secret insight into these organizations. So being authentic about your brand so candidates know what to expect from your organization is critical. Be consistent in internal and external brand messaging in all your communications. Nurture company culture and make sure candidates fit that culture.
I think 70%, that's only going to increase as the current generation gets older. That would be getting close to 100%, I think, coming up in the next few years. Very important one, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I must admit my own use of these platforms has increased over my career, that's for sure. Because, to be honest, like the more quality talent you are, the more selective you're going to be.
Yeah, sure,
So,
absolutely.
you're probably if you're a great candidate, you're going to have more than one offer on the table. So, it's going to be down to those differentiators that make or break, the decision, I would say. So implementing predictive analytics to find talent. Rank and find the right candidates without bias. So this is really cool. You can use software to help, match up potential candidates to the job requirements. You can use deep analytics that will help your organization effectively weave through candidates based on historical trends, and move towards AI technology and predictive analytics combined will enable your organization to better understand cost per hire and decrease unnecessary costs. So if you are running these practices manually or, part automated or, in different areas, it's really challenging and difficult to get visibility. And if you do not have visibility, you can't formulate strategies. Retain a personal touch in the talent acquisition process. So this is actually really, I worked in recruitment a really long time ago, don't hold it against me, but I actually, when I'm working with clients, often say, at some point we are going to need to personalize the experience because a lot of bulk emails and bulk things that we can send out, but how can we really tailor this to the experience of the candidate? How can we have some, nurture built in, and how can we also maintain, that personal touch? So the new realities about remote workforce is that remote recruiting and even remote onboarding can provide some challenges to this. So keep communications personal so the candidate feels connected to the organisation. Using templates that are personalised, like make sure that, in the onboarding or whatever it might be, you might be able to personalise that to the actual person, that user's experience. I don't want to see things in my onboarding that are not relevant to me. Like, I want to see things that are catered towards my experience and my role. Who are
Yeah,
in my team, who's my manager, who am I going to meet on the first day, those types of things, whether it be virtually or face-to-face. We want to make sure that throughout your talent acquisition process, your candidates get a taste of what the job would be like. So I kind of liken this to, you kind of do one thing the way you do everything. So it's that first impression, isn't it? So we want to make sure that, we give a realistic view of the organization. We want to make sure that we can assign, job trials, that we can even meet some of the team,
hmm,
yeah, I know that internally here, at Ascender, what we do is we often get them to, in an interview process, potentially interview or meet with different people, not just the reporting manager. So there's opportunity to get more of a roundtable view on both parts. Yeah.
absolutely. I found when I was interviewing several years back with the sender, by the time the second interview came around, I was discussing with one of the upper sort of managers. I think I met maybe sort of half a dozen people by the end of the interview process, and it really set me up well for the job that was to come.
Yeah, and you kind of feel more like, as the candidate's point of view, do you feel like it's more of a team culture? What did you feel out of that, Michael? Like, what did you experience, or what did you take away from that?
Yeah, absolutely. I felt much more at ease. Felt like I was part of the team because I had, managers and other staff members that I'd be dealing with. I had a chance to meet them straight away. So by the time I actually started the job, I felt like I was definitely one of the team already.
Yeah, awesome. So we can do that through panel interviews. You can do all this kind of stuff. We can still replicate this and automate this in a really easy way online. And that's how we can help support you. It helps them get adopted into that culture easy as well. So simplify that job application process and onboarding. Like, that's a no-brainer. Like, let software do the heavy
Mhm.
lifting for you so you can focus on the quality. Like, if you're spending all your time, manually processing things and, chasing paperwork and, following up all the time, then you've got no time to add that quality piece because you're so busy in the doing piece. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
if we can
absolutely.
digitize that job application process and provide multiple ways a candidate can apply, like through Seek or through your website, is a great option as well. So again, help with your branding. If you see more candidates coming to your website and your careers page, that, your branding's reaching the market. You can test that through quality. You can look at the reporting and say, are our candidates starting to come through our corporate website as well? Make onboarding an easy task for new hires, digitize and organize tasks required from new hires, set due dates with clear instructions on how to complete tasks. Like I said, it's kind of that old analogy of, your first impressions last. So if we can do a really nice, seamless onboarding experience so that person is, even completing stuff prior to their start date, it can really help
Mhm.
with, that productivity, but also I feel like I'm part of a professional organization that's got it together. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think so. It definitely gives you a sense of confidence in the decision you've made. You've gone with the right company. You haven't, made a mistake. I definitely feel that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, totally. So embed learning into the onboarding strategy as well. New hires can be acclimated to your organization and complete mandatory compliance training before they start. So you could, like, policy sign off, etc., all that sort of stuff is a no-brainer. It's also really
Mhm.
powerful if you have contractors or you have different groups. You can separate them out so they can do training that's unique to them. But there's also videos and training that you could do about the culture that's happening and stuff like that as well. So start to get them socialized that way as well. I think that ties back nicely to that personal touch and experience.
Yeah, I totally agree. But I think now is probably a good time to launch our poll for the day.
Yeah.
Now we're coming up to some of the modules. So the question is, does your company currently use onboarding or recruitment software to help with talent acquisition? So obviously the answers are the options here: yes for both, just onboarding, just recruitment, or no for neither. Mel, in your experience, what do you think would be the likely result of this?
Look, in my experience, what we see organizations automate first is the recruitment process because it's just so admin heavy. But then they realize how, like, they kind of hit a bottleneck at the onboarding, and it's a bit of a train smash because then payroll are suddenly having to manually enter paperwork, and, you know, the candidate's been through this, you know, online portal experience, and then they're sent an employee pack via the mail or email, and or they you know, having to come in to an office and sign policies. It's kind of, yeah, it falls a bit flat. But I
Yeah.
mean, that's just what I've seen as buying behaviors, is that recruitment typically is first, and, you know, onboarding is secondary. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see where the market's at now, where our audience is at today.
Okay, guys, we'll wrap up in about 5 to 10 seconds. I think we've just about got everybody submitted.
It's an anonymous poll, so we won't see your individual, you know, votes. We'll
That's
just see,
right.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what are we looking at? No for neither, 44%. That's a little larger than I was expecting. What do you think, Mel?
So 44% manual, is that right? No from either?
No for neither. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
So
right.
yes for both at 28%, onboarding 9%, and recruitment at 19%.
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, well, I mean, it keeps us in a job, doesn't it? If we've got such a large market that is still operating in manual processes. Look, to be fair, you know, as well, to give some context around that, there is probably about 20% market penetration of HCM across Australia and the US. You know, so 80% of organizations are running on manual spreadsheets and, you know, emails and things like that. Of all the modules in HCM Suite, I would say that recruitment is one of the most adopted though. So it's one of the more mature ones in the organization. So yeah, that kind of makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Well, in saying that, let's move on to recruitment.
Yeah. So recruitment. Let's have a look at some of the, we're going to look at the ineffective ways and the effective ways and what the outcomes of those are. So some things to consider here are, how long does your recruitment process take? You know, candidates have an expectation, and then, you know, that we have to respond in a way. So it's about, how do we manage that expectation? How do we meet things in a timely manner? You know, how do we make sure that our communication is there with those candidates as well? You know, while a longer recruitment time is not necessarily wrong, you know, it can put you at a disadvantage, because as other companies vie for the same candidates, you know, it could be not, you might be missing out on, you know, on the top candidates. Like I said, regardless of unemployment rates, top candidates always have more than one, you know, offer on the table. So it's definitely something to act with almost a sense of urgency around, I would say.
Absolutely.
Are you utilizing remote interviews wisely as well? So managers can now tap into a bigger talent pool, right? So previously we were kind of restricted to our 4 walls or 5Ks or 20Ks from work or whatever it might be. But as we see this remote living happening, like where we can all be working from home and continuing, you know, working in these environments, it kind of opens up a wider network to tap into now. So as we do that, remote interviews also enable them to find creative ways to connect with the candidate, to know if they are a good fit by asking more meaningful questions beyond that candidate's resume. So making sure that we can tap into this wider network by facilitating online interviews, have video enabled, make sure you can interact with that candidate, and also start to ask some really, unique questions along the way that sit beyond just the resume.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah.
what do you test skills for? This is a really interesting one as well. So testing skills is important. We all understand that, but shouldn't be used as a screening mechanism so much. The most important measure lies in the person's ability to learn. I
Mhm.
remember one of my mentors, actually, he used to hire based on emotional intelligence and critical thinking, because he always used to say product can be taught, process can be taught. So understanding some of these more soft skills and nuances when he was talking about hiring salespeople, like this was, a big piece for him. So, and I always found that quite interesting. So while the majority of applicants report that they had a positive experience in skills testing during their interview process, it should only be used to understand a candidate's proficiency. Now, next we're going to move into the economics of human capital management. And this is also starting to move along the lines of like, what's the outcome here? So besides, saving time and automating a process, what else are we going to achieve for an organization? So when you have a look at this slide here, you can see that you've got your financial gain or loss, on the left-hand side there. And then horizontally, you've got time frame, okay? So you can see that we've got a really big, like low curve that's happening here. Now, when someone comes into the organization, they come in at a cost. We spend time and money hiring them, onboarding them, trying to develop their effectiveness, and then trying to optimize. In fact, typically it kind of tapers off as well because they fall quite flat. Now, when we have a
Mhm.
look at this big scoop at the bottom, let's say your time to productivity. So from when you hire someone to when they're fully productive in their role, I don't know the averages, to be honest, because everybody is unique, but let's say it's 3 months, okay? So let's say it takes 3 months to get someone fully productive in the role. That's actually at the bottom of the curve there. So when you look at that scoop, at the very bottom there is around the 3-month mark, because you'd spend the next 3 months trying to recover that cost. So you don't actually break even until, the 6-month mark. I know in some organizations, it takes 12 months to get people, up to speed, sort of thing. So it can be 18 months until you're actually, getting a return on that person. Return on human capital is what we're talking about here. So it's interesting. And then if you have early attrition costs, as you can see there where the X's are, that's a
Mhm.
bleeding cost because we spend time and money hiring them, onboarding them, doing all their training, all those costs are there, and then they bounce and we have to fill that role again. So
Yeah, and that's why it's so important, this whole sort of talent acquisition. In this year as well, 2020, after the year we've had, a lot of companies they're on the up. They're looking to recruit more people and build, and it's more important than ever.
yeah, absolutely. And that's also where quality of hire, quality of onboarding, matching the person to the role and to the culture is going to help reduce that turnover as well, that early turnover and the cost, which is ultimately what we're trying to do here. So what does a healthy one look like? So if we can correct that, it looks more like this. So you reduce that time and cost to hire, and you get people more productive sooner, so you can get a greater return on investment earlier. So in for-profit organizations, that could look like more EBIT per employee, so more earnings before interest and tax, or more profit. In not-for-profits, a lot of the time the service model there is, how do we improve service delivery at less cost? So, how do we increase our quality and maintain, our employee numbers? Okay, so that's how it can look in different models. What are the financial advantages of recruitment? So this is a really simple slide here, and Michael's got some really cool resources that he can link us up with as well. But this here is going to show us that if you can highlight each single function of what it is that you're trying to automate and do, what's the outcome of that? And then what's the financial impact of that? The reverse of this is if you're looking to get budget approval to buy a recruitment system, what you want to do is identify what's broken, what's the evidence that it's broken, and then what's the cost of that issue. So, you know, if you're looking at reduced time to hire, let's say that the time to hire is broken. So it's taking too long to hire people, okay? What's the evidence of that? You could say it's currently taking, you know, we had a client took 9 months. It's taking 9 months to hire a role. Okay, cool. So what would we like it to be and what's the cost saving if we do that? So the cost impact of delaying hires is, do we have people acting up in higher duties? Do we have contractors in there? Do we have loss of project or project delays or those kinds of things happening? It's easy when it's a revenue generating role. Like if you have a, you know, a salesperson that's not in the seat, you know, it's whatever their target was for that duration. So if it's 3 months that they're not there, what was their target for 3 months? That's the impact. You know, if it's other roles, what's the function of the role and what's the loss of productivity in the time that no one's in the seat? That's pretty critical to understanding as well. So move through to onboarding. I'm not watching time, Michael, so if you can just ref me, yellow
That's all
card
right.
me or red card me if I'm going too slow, too fast.
I think we'll just
Okay,
squeeze it there, Mel.
cool. So poor onboarding experiences. Let's talk about that first. What can that result in? Employees feeling alienated, struggling to fit into culture of a new organization, you know, delayed integration, slow progress, you know, that increases time to effectiveness. Early attrition issues and high turnover, that's huge. And also high cost, significant cost to the organization. What happens then is it can also be, you know, reputation damage or employer brand and perception of the reputation can be damaged. Possible legal costs arising from poor experience and compliance. You know, candidates accepting other jobs and offers, you know, leaving soon after joining. So, you know, if you join an organization and you get in there and within the first week, you're like, oh, this isn't great, you know, like I don't have a buddy, I don't know who my manager is, I don't know what's expected of me, I still haven't got a computer or whatever it might be, still messing around. You're like, oh, I don't feel like I'm really part of a professional, you know, organization here. I'm going to go back and take that other opportunity and see if it's still available. So, and then it's all that cost of that curve that we're talking about, all that hiring cost, all that training cost, all that onboarding cost is just, it's a big one. And we can actually help you articulate the, you know, more specifics around that. So if you want support with how to quantify the cost of your issues, please reach out. We've got really skilled professionals to help you work through your business case. So onboarding tips, establish connections and build community. It almost starts through that hiring process as well. Like, you know, Michael, you said earlier when you got to meet many people, you know, before even accepting the offer. Create a virtual buddy system. So this one's really cool. Like you can, you know, get people like a mentoring or buddy system. Embrace your company purpose and values. A great way to, you know, pop that through the onboarding and then demonstrate how that's being shown. You know, there's also employee recognitions and awards that can go with that. Make it easy to track, accomplish, and align their goals. So make it easy. Yeah, that's a big one. Unify the employee experience as well. Okay. Now, what are the outcomes of better onboarding? Employees will clearly understand what is expected of them before they start work. Like the anxiety levels go way down when things are clear. When I know what's expected of me, you know, it's easier for me to deliver on that. And then I also feel good, right? So I'm clear, I know what's expected of me, and I know what I'm set out to achieve. And then I feel good because I'm achieving that, right? If I'm not sure on what I'm meant to be doing, if I'm not sure on where the goalposts are, it's really hard for me to kick a goal.
Absolutely.
Employees will become productive faster as well. So like you saw in that big S curve that we call, you know, the return on human capital there, you know, if we can get people clearer, get things efficient, make things easy, make things unified, then it's not just efficiency for HR. In fact, the impact is more efficiency out at the employee level and the manager level. So yes, all of this will absolutely save a lot of pain and headaches for HR and payroll. But what we also want to do is make sure that, you know, the productivity a lot of the time is actually out there in the workforce. So when we do look at business cases, that's a little gotcha to be mindful of as well. There's the HR case and then there's the business case. It's important to have an understanding of both. So the HR case is, you know, what's the time saving or efficiencies or et cetera in HR. But then again, what is the, you know, impact at an organization level? A really good one I did with a client once around onboarding for a hospitality company. They focused on a HR case, which was saving that they estimated was about $30,000 a year in cost. Now they were a couple of thousand people. So I asked them how they got to that, and they quantified out the time spent from HR, the time spent from the CEO signing off on, you know, contracts, and then the postage costs. So this was all just for onboarding and manually sending things out. I said, okay, that's interesting. I said, so what happens if you know, onboard people slowly or what happens if you're onboarding people and you don't get all of their forms back, you don't get all of their policies signed off? Can you still roster them on? Like, can they still start work? They said, absolutely not. I said, okay, so if you don't have people to start that shift or start that, you know, their work, what happens then? Do you need to go to agency staff, contractors, whatever? And they said, yes, we need to go to agency staff. I said, okay, cool. And our agency staff more or less or the same as a regular employee? And they said it's 25% loading. So when we looked at the cost, it was actually $250,000, which is huge, right? So the cost of
Yeah,
doing nothing with the impact was up to $250,000 that were of agency spend. You know, I'm not talking recruitment agency, I'm talking like labor hire, like as in, you
yeah,
know, agency staff.
yep.
It was huge. So that's what I mean. The HR case is one, and then there's the business case, which is another. And typically the impact at the business level is quite big. So it's worth considering.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
I think
speaking of business cases, sorry,
yes.
Michael, if I keep cutting you
Yeah, go
off.
ahead, please.
We do have a case study here that we've got a great one from Regional Australia Bank. And again, they talk about impact at a management level. So, you know, how can they ease the manager and the employee experience? Because managers can then focus on doing their actual jobs, you know, managing their teams, etc., rather than being bogged down with the administrative tasks. Michael, do you have a copy of this you're able to link up in the chat, or how are we getting this to people?
Sure do, Mel. So I've been sharing a few resources and I'll share the case study at the moment. Guys, if
Fabulous.
you'd like to download this, we do have a version in the handout section. We've also got a PDF of a list of a few other helpful resources that you might find useful after the webinar. So just go to the handouts section and download if you like. Back to you, Mel.
Amazing. Cool as. All right, so the highlights of the case study. So what were their challenges? So difficulty attracting quality candidates, inefficient current processes for recruiting and onboarding, lack of accurate reporting due to data not being held in a central location, and poor visibility across metrics and data. I mean, I wish we could see our audience so we can like, give me a hands up for if you've experienced one or all of these. I imagine that 40-something% who are doing manual processes are tearing their hair out going, yes, that's us.
I think we should have had a second poll.
So, and I guess the tricky part is like HR are incredibly good at manual processes. Like, you know, you become really good at it, but it's painful and it means that you're stuck in the transactional world and then not adding value back to the business the way you could be. Case study results though, better visibility across metrics and data, more accurate reports for data-driven decision making, and then streamlined process for recruitment and onboarding. So I think the case study's been linked up now, so you can actually have a read of that. This particular client has got a number of our modules, but it's a great one to listen to their experience around. So in summary, as outlined above in effective talent acquisition process, will decrease your employee time to hire and time to productivity, leading to greater employee alignment, productivity, and retention. Okay. Building the employee brand to attract the right candidates is critical. So if we're attracting the right candidates, we're going to, I just want to draw this out for people, building the employee brand to attract the right candidates. That means we can get a better match for the role, we can get better quality, we can retain them for longer. If we have better quality, typically we have better output. We have reduced our, time to hire, but impacted on that, productivity curve that we saw earlier. So, employee brand is really about quality of candidate. Yeah. Implementing predictive analytics to find talent as well. So this is really cool because it's implementing unbiased predictive analytics to help, create some instant shortlisting and, save time, absolutely, but also, again, help you get that quality. Retain a personal touch in the talent acquisition process. I feel like this is super critical and one that's often missed because we're so focused on automating things and putting processes in and, automated emails and all that kind of jazz. But let's not forget that personal touch. Let's put those videos on. Let's make sure that there's a personalized experience in that onboarding process, that there's personality in this as well. Still picking up the phone is also important. Simplify job application and onboarding. If it's, too long, like I can't remember the stats, but I know that people will literally look at a, like a Seek ad or something like that for 30 seconds or 60 seconds or something crazy like that. So, we want to make sure that we're not, bogging down the process with the 24-page job application process. And then people aren't getting a wad of, paperwork or even, I don't know, 20 different attachments in an email that again may or may not get through because it could be too big and then we don't know what got through. There's a bunch of stuff that issues that can pop up from that, and then you've got non-compliance issues as well. And then look at software to streamline onboarding and recruitment process. It makes sense. We have software for many other, things in the business. So, finance, operations, sales, etc. But, your people are typically 60 to 70% of your operating cost. So it's time to start, looking at how we can get greater effectiveness out of that operating cost of 60 to 70%, because that's really quite a big cost to a business. So how do we start getting a greater return on that? Cool.
Well said. Oh, absolutely. So how are we looking at time? I think we've got time for a couple of questions. The first one that's come through, how flexible is the software? So that's a little bit broad, but I guess the question's in reference to onboarding and recruitment software.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think it's really important to understand, when you are considering these, to look at two things: best practice and then configurability. Don't go down the path of customizations. The difference in the nuances in that language is customizations are, it doesn't exist today and the vendor needs to build that software, right? So that's the one that costs money, right? That's the one that costs money and has to be tested, etc. Configuration means that it's flexible and that you can adapt it to your look and feel, and again, to your user experience. So, make sure that things aren't lockstep in process, because you'll always have an outlier in that recruitment process. Like there's several ways to count to 10, right? So when you look at a recruitment or a hiring process, make sure that you have the process there, but it's not lockstep. It shows flexibility in that. And then when you get to the onboarding, make sure you can really configure that onboarding to the new hires experience. Like, you could really cater it towards, say, if you have both a blue collar workforce, and a white collar workforce, what the requirements for the roles are could be very uniquely different, so what we want to make sure is that, it's actually catered towards that. So absolutely, the software is flexible enough through a hiring process, so it's not lockstep. It also demonstrates best practice, so it can, move organizations through that. And then onboarding can really ultimately be configured to cater towards that new hires experience, regardless of what type of role they have. So it's really cool.
Okay. I guess this is related to recruitment. Do you have any suggestions around best practice for interviewing new staff? On that topic, I think we do have a website checklist that I might try to link to the audience at the moment. Mel, do you have any advice in regards to this?
Yeah, so we did touch on it earlier, but also I think the checklist that you can link up for people would be a great resource to leverage there, Michael. But also just making sure that, you know, we're clear on, there's two things. We're clear on the requirements of the role, so the mandatory stuff, absolutely. But what's the stretch piece? Like, let's say you've got two candidates that show they have exactly the same qualifications, then what's the differentiator? Like, what are you looking for that's going to help drive discretionary effort? What are you looking for that maybe could be a more of a cultural fit, more, you know, diversity in the team, whatever it might be, you know, as in how are they going to complement the environment? So is it years of experience? Is it, you know, working in another industry that could bring some value across as well? Because I see from my recruitment days, I see people just recycling the same candidates going round and round. But where I've seen the greatest success is quite often when people come from a different industry. You know, they have transferable skills, but have come from a different industry. But absolutely get the mandatory stuff sorted, but then try and identify what's the quality piece on top of that that would really make, you know, a successful employee.
Okay, brilliant. Look, I think that's probably a good spot to wrap up. We've almost reached time. Everybody, thanks so much for joining us today. It's been an interesting topic and it's a really timely one as well. Mel, once again, great performance and a lot of interesting information there. Guys, there is a after webinar survey, so if you have the time, please submit your responses to that. We're always interested to hear people's feedback on our presentations and if they've got any future ideas for upcoming webinars. So that'd be really good. Mel, thanks again.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
And
Take
thanks,
care.
guys. We'll see you next time.